Today, we welcome another first-time speaker, Ms. Biggar. It's my pleasure speaking on the topic, Introduction to Reiki. Take it away.
Thank you. Well, it's an honor to be invited to come and be with you today, so thank you. As I speak, you're welcome to ask questions or share experiences. Reiki is it's universal life energy, and it's something that we're all born with this ability to use our hands. I'm just realizing I can talk up more. Okay. So it's universal life energy, and it's something we're born with this ability to use our hands to focus that energy for healing, for giving healing to ourselves and for helping others access that healing energy. So when I was growing up, I didn't know about Reiki. My family didn't know about that, and so it wasn't like something I was encouraged to use. But as I've been around children, I just encourage them, if they're hurt, to put their hands on that place, and it's something that they take to very naturally. It's just like breathing for them. And or if I'm hurt, I would ask a child, if I'm around a child, to put their hand on me too. Cool. And their Reiki is very potent and very quick. So then, as I was a young adult, I had the opportunity to learn Reiki, and at first I thought, oh well, I wouldn't be able to do this. Only people that were very pure and kind of had been on a very clear spiritual path for a long time would be able to do something like this. But it is actually available for everyone, and no matter where you are in your life, this is available to you. And I like that it is available to everyone. That it's not just for Christians or just for Buddhists. It doesn't matter what your culture or your religion is, that it's universal life energy. It's like that connection to God, that that energy comes down from the universe through the top of our head and from the earth up through the bottom of our feet and runs through our body. And so we're receiving the benefits of it as it's coming through us. And so when I'm sharing Reiki with someone else through my hands, it's not like I'm draining my personal energy to be able to give to others. It's a way to be able to give to others that is really supports you in taking care of yourself also. I think in my personality type, I had that kind of personality that it was like my gift of who I was also was my damage in a way, like that sort of could be too giving, and that I wasn't so good at the balance of how to take care of myself or give to myself, whereas Reiki supports you to be able to give to others in a way that's healthy for yourself, and also to be able to receive from others and also to give to myself. So, I love to treat myself. It's just something that's so handy and available, and something I just do as I'm waking up, as I'm going to sleep. Many times through the day, there's just times where I may, have my hands somewhere, just that it feels like, oh yeah, my shoulder's hurting, I would treat my shoulder. Or you're waiting in an office somewhere and you have a sore knee, so you're just treating your knee while you're waiting. It's just very, very available that way. And so what Reiki's doing is speeding up the healing process. So it just is accelerating that, and it's working on all levels, so mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and how all of that weaves together for us. The first time I had someone do Reiki on me, I lived up in Silverton for many, many years, up Red Mountain outside of Silverton, and I was a passenger but driving over to Caslow for a workshop one weekend, and I'd woken up with just a kink in my neck, and it was really painful. So when I got there, I registered for the workshop, but I said, you know, I'll come back later, I just need to go find somewhere to go lie down for a while. And the person doing the registration said, oh, come on in, we've got people that do Reiki. And I thought, oh, leave me alone. But I went in because I was polite, and I didn't know how to say no. And it was great because I had 3 people during this lecture that was going on that were just kind of sitting around me and treating my neck and my back, and I was like amazed by the sensations, like it's just warm and tingling, and you know, I could just feel the pain and the tension leaving my body. But the other thing that was happening was I was just thinking, all the thoughts that were coming up in that time was about what was going on in my work situation, and you know, it felt like some shifts and some solutions coming to me, and it was the first time that I got the connection that what was going on in my body was what was going on in my life, you know, like that it was connected to what was happening in my life, and it felt like, you know, the healing was happening in connection with that. So I learned Reiki in 1985, and I started teaching in 1985. So I first learned Reiki in 1982. So, and then I've been teaching since then. And you know, when I first learned Reiki, I just, you know, wasn't sure that my Reiki would be as good as somebody else's Reiki, and someone would ask for Reiki, and I'd say, oh, sure, and then I'd think, oh, too bad so-and-so's not here, because they're really good at this, you know. And then I'd do some Reiki on that person, not a full treatment, but, you know, we'd be at a party, and they'd have a headache, and then I'd treat their head while we were sitting there, and they go, oh, thanks, my headache's gone, thanks a lot, and I'd like, really? Wow, oh, this works, you know? And so I just kind of built my confidence with trusting that my Reiki worked also. And you know, so over time I just got more confident with that ability. But it's very potent, like right away. What happens in the first degree class is that I do a series of 4 initiations over the period of time of the class. And it's very simple to learn Reiki. You learn the form, which is like the hand positions. And then you have these 4 initiations, and the initiations are like reawakening that ability, and opening that channel or passageway for that energy to flow freely, and it's opening you for universal good only. So it's not like you're getting opened up and you're vulnerable to, you know, what energies could come in. It's very clearly just for universal good, and it's like that, you know, perking up that ability to receive that energy and have that come in through you. So, and then with that series of initiations, then that last initiation is like sealing that, completing it. So it's not like if you're not using your Reiki for a while, then it closes up again. It's like, that's available to you. You can always use that. And for people that don't go through the initiation process, I still encourage people to begin to use your hands. It's just, you know, sometimes giving ourselves permission to use our hands. So even if you haven't used that all your life, it's like that energy's still going to come through some. It's like that passageway has gotten kind of corroded or blocked up, but some, I think of it as water going through a pipe, like some water is still going to come through, and the more you're putting that water through, the more opening that will happen. So the initiations just kind of make that a quick and thorough process, but you can also just begin to use your hands and see how that feels. And so, you know, sometimes people will ask about working with healing different things, like, oh, how do you treat this, or how do you treat that? The best way to treat anything is just to do a full treatment. Like, you learn the hand positions to treat the whole body, and as I said before, you're also treating the whole being, you know, the emotions, the feelings, the spiritual path. And so the Reiki is helping you heal on all those levels, and also to grow, to like move forward on your spiritual path. There's, you know, since I did Reiki, you know, when I first learned Reiki, at that time I had a really challenging relationship with my mom. You know, I still are like that with her. And at first, my mom heard that Reiki was like the healing work that Jesus did. And so for her, that kind of scared her, because she, even though my mom, I was brought up Anglican, and so my mom was very involved in her church, and she would go to the church and have like a minister do laying on of hands, or, you know, have someone that was involved through the church do, you know, come as a special guest and do healing things. So she could believe that, and she was totally into prayer and, you know, all the other ways of bringing in that energy. And but for her, it was hard for me, you know, for her to get that I could do this, like that I was kind of at that time maybe the black sheep of the family or something, right? So we had 4 girls, 4 teenagers growing up together, and I was the youngest, right? And so at that time, I think, you know, that just scared my mom. It's sort of like, oh, what is she into now? But as she saw my healing over time, I think, you know, she opened more to that. And I was also really connected with my grandma, her mom. And when my grandma was 93, she'd fallen and broken her hip, and I was far away from her. And with the second degree Reiki, you learn also to be able to do distant treatments. And so I learned second degree at that time, so I could be sending to my grandma. And I phoned her and talked to her about it, and she was like, oh, that would be lovely, dear, very open to it, you know. And so, you know, I think my mom got that I was doing that with my grandma. My grandma, you know, was up and walking again within a couple months, and she ended up living to 104. Not just because of the Reiki, because of who she was and many things in her life, right? But she was definitely, you know, a great inspiration and my hero in my life. And so I think my mom became more open to it, and it was at the time that I was going to be initiated as a Reiki master. I was with my parents and offered them, it felt like they were more open, and I offered them if they would like to try a treatment. And so my dad was very quiet, and he is a very quiet man, or was a very quiet man. And so, you know, he had a treatment and just got very relaxed and fell asleep during the treatment, which is fine. You can fall asleep and the Reiki's still working. And then he, you know, thanked me afterwards. And then after my mom's treatment, she thanked me, and then the next day she came up to me and she gave me this hug, and she just held on to me, and she said, that Reiki treatment you gave me yesterday, that was really loving care. Like, she got the energy of it. And then after that, you know, she totally was open to it and trusted that. And when my dad got sick, he got sick with cancer, and so at that time, both of my parents got initiated with Reiki, and previously 2 of my sisters had been initiated with Reiki. And you know, when I first learned it, I thought, oh, none of my family would ever understand about this, or none of them would ever be into this. But then, you know, one of my sisters had gotten initiated, and then another one had, and then at the time my dad was sick, both my parents and my other sister and brother-in-law all learned Reiki, just so we could all be treating my dad during that time. And there was one point where he decided that, like, I spent some time with him, and my dad and I had a pretty shy relationship, but I just kind of got up my courage to talk to him and say, you know, like, that I supported him, whatever he wanted for, you know, whatever felt right for him, and that this was, you know, his path, his healing, like whether he wanted treatment, like Reiki treatments, whether he wanted chemo, radiation, you know, like change his diet, like whatever felt right for him, that I would totally support him. And then he was in the hospital, and I was away at the time. My dad didn't really say too much when I talked to him about that. So then he said, he got my sister to bring the rest of the family together, and I wasn't there. And he said, Holly and I have already talked about this. So I was really shocked when my sister told me this. And you know, I just, I don't want to have any, you know, more tests or radiation or chemo. He didn't have any of that. And he said, if you want to support me, you could just pray that I go quickly. Like, he was able to know that that was the right time for him. And so he only lived for 3 months from the time he was diagnosed to the time he died. And so it was a very quick process for him. But I got to witness all the healing that was happening for him during that time. It was like his spirit was just getting brighter and lighter, and it's like the burdens of his life were just falling away, and just really got to see him really shine during that time. And my dad was, you know, he lived in this house of women, and he was very quiet and very, you know, considerate. Like, he really showed his love through that sort of quiet, considerate, kind acts. And my mom was like the boss of the family, and, you know, it was always, oh, well, you better go ask your mom, like, if we asked him about anything. So, you know, for him to take that kind of space, even though my mom really wanted him to have, you know, radiation and more tests and all that kind of thing, for him to take that space in our family to say, this is what I want, and you can pray that I go quickly, and I'd like to not be in the hospital and just be at home, and like that he allowed us to take care of him was such an honor. And you know, there was one point where he was getting close to dying, so less in that conscious kind of state, but my sister and I were, you know, helping him to be able to urinate and into, you know, a container or whatever. And my mom said, oh, it's a good thing your dad doesn't know what your girls are doing for him. And we're like, both looked at each other saying, he knows. Like, we felt so blessed that he was allowing us to care for him instead of, you know, being in the hospital. And that he made those choices, and that he took that space in our family, like, felt like such a huge healing for all of us, and such a gift. And so I bring that up because there's also many times I've worked with cancer where the Reiki heals the tumors, where it's, you know, what happens with it when it's like a tumor, or it's, you know, gallstones or something solid, a mass in the body. The Reiki will dissolve that, and then you just need to like work with cleansing the toxins out of the body. So, you know, people will say, oh, can you heal cancer with Reiki? It's like, yes, you know, there's many times that you can, but it's each an individual experience, and there's times when the person dies. But that, you know, I think it's like in our culture how we see healing and how we see cure and how we see dying, and you know, that it's such an individual thing, that the Reiki is supporting that person to feel what's right for them. You know, in other situations it may be that the person is doing a combination of Reiki and traditional treatments like the chemo or the radiation, and that's supporting the healing, that's supporting the nausea, or you know, whatever, that it can work hand in hand, that it's not an either or with Reiki, that it does totally supports Western medicine also, and that, you know, the times that I've been with people as they're dying, I've helped a lot with births, right, with Reiki. I'm there with births, and then, you know, getting to be with people also when they're dying. It's that that coming in and that going out, that transition time, where you don't get to really you can't really do it for them or take it for them, but you're just there as a witness. And I feel like, you know, anytime I'm doing a Reiki treatment, that's part of what it is that I'm doing. I'm there as a witness for their healing. So it's not like I'm healing you. I'm helping bring this energy in for you to use for your healing. And I'm there as a witness. I'm helping hold that container for the healing, and helping, you know, hold people, sometimes, like, you know, in them healing whatever pain that is, whether it's physical pain, whether it's emotional pain. It's like giving space to that, and you know, being comfortable with that, and just allowing that healing to happen, and being present with them for that. So I'm just gonna have a little drink of water. If there's any questions so far or anything, you're welcome to ask. Yes?
I wonder what Reiki means and which language it came from, the word.
Well, in the late 1800s, it was rediscovered in Japan. So I think it's something from, you know, from forever in different cultures. It comes up in different ways, I think. And the lineage that I learned from is through Japan. And Reiki means universal life energy. That's like the translation. Mm-hmm. Yes?
You mentioned there's different levels. How are they administered, and how do you attain those?
Well, first degree is complete in itself. You learn how to treat others, and you learn how to treat yourself. And and like, I teach Reiki now, right? So I teach those classes, and it's simple to learn. So I do it over 3 or 4 days. Sometimes I'll do over 4 days, part days, you know, 4 sessions. And it's like 4 sessions, but sometimes I'm doing it like a Friday evening and then 2 sessions on a Saturday. So Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and then Sunday, like a 4-hour day or something on a Sunday. So I have a first degree class booked in April, that weekend of the 17th to the 19th. I'm doing a 3-day session. And so then first degree's complete in itself, and you're right away, you're able to start doing treatments, and you get, during the weekend, you're getting treated and getting to practice your Reiki, and you know, getting to begin using that right away. And then Um, so some people may never feel like they need to go on to do second degree. It's not a more is better kind of thing so much. It's more if you're feeling like this has been a really good support in your life, then it's a way to go deeper with yourself and with your own healing. And then there's symbols that you learn with the second degree that can work deeper with the mental, emotional healing, and with doing the distant healing, and just you know, with really focusing that energy. And it's just, you know, welcoming that in a deeper way into yourself, I think, with your own healing, with that moving ahead on your path. And so then, and so with first degree there's 4 initiations, and with second degree there's 1 initiation, and then master is the 3rd level, and that's really for, you know, people who feel drawn to that as their life work for teaching Reiki, and there's 1 initiation for that.
What do you mean by initiation?
Initiation is like this ceremony or ritual that's been passed down through the generations of masters since the late 1800s, right? And taught to me, and so that it's like it doesn't, you know, take a long time, but it's, you know, it's like you sit there like this during that time and get, you know, your hands get moved and things maybe with your hands, and then it's like as I'm doing an initiation, it feels like I'm this giant tree where my roots go down into the earth, and I feel like this great expansion kind of you know, being really supported, like that energy of the universe, that divine light, that energy of God, like just coming through me in that way. And I'm like that vessel for bringing that energy in for someone. So it's a great honor for me to get to share an initiation with someone.
Is there an association that gives these things, or how
Well,
are they tracked?
Originally, like my teacher is Phyllis Leigh Furumoto, and she's like the lineage bearer of from, like, there was Dr. Usui, then Dr. Hayashi carried on after him, and then Takata, who was Phyllis's grandmother. So my teacher is Phyllis, and I learned first and second and master from Phyllis, and then and her grandmother was the lineage before her, and then her teacher was Dr. Hayashi. His teacher was Dr. Usui, and Dr. Usui is who rediscovered it in the late 1800s. So that's the lineage. But then after Takata died, she was Japanese American, and she lived in Hawaii, and then she initiated 22 masters while she was alive in Canada and United States. And then Phyllis had a gathering of those masters as a memorial about a year after Takata had died. They did a memorial in Hawaii, whoever could make it. And it was so wonderful for them to come together and get to share their work. And so they met the following year in Lumby, BC. There was a Reiki master living there who has since died, Barbara Brown. And so by this time there was one of the other masters that had been initiated by Takata had started an organization called the AIRA, the American International Reiki Association. So people were asking, well, who were the rest of the people? And so they formed an organization at that time called the Reiki Alliance. And so it was like two branches off the same root at that point. But now there's like many, many, many different things popping up in the world under the name of Reiki. So I'm from the traditional lineage, and so it's very simple. Like with Barbara Weber Ray, it's actually changed now from being called Reiki to being called the Radiance Technique. But she added some other lineages, so there were, not lineages, levels. So there was 7 levels instead of 3, you know, and there's other things out there where it's like Reiki Plus, or, you know, that people adding other things in. So that's one thing that Phyllis really stresses is, you know, people, you can do, you can use Reiki with other practices, like, you know, Reiki with massage or with acupuncture, or with crystals, or with, you know, other things. But Phyllis's teaching is like that we keep it very simple, and that it's clear that this is Reiki as we're teaching it, so we don't, you know, need to be adding in other things, that it's just what people are learning is just Reiki. Then they, you know, it complements everything else as you're working with it. And also, you know, people are really welcome to use prayer with their Reiki. And, you know, I talk about that in my classes, like as you're beginning a treatment, you know, you can just take a moment to, you know, connect with yourself and be in your body, be present, and you can say a prayer, welcome in your spirit guides, or ask for the support of the lineage of Reiki, and begin a treatment. But with Reiki, there's also what I think of as, you know, like doing full treatments, which is always the best, but there's often times where you're just with your friend and they've got a sore ankle, and you're sitting and having a visit, and you're treating their ankle while you're together. So there's things that I think of as casual Reiki, where you're just, there's lots of times where, you know, you're just getting to share some Reiki while you're together with someone, or, you know, with your child when you're doing bedtime or things like that. Yes?
I have 2 questions. The
Yeah.
first one is, when you're in somebody else's energy field and you're doing Reiki on them, do you sometimes get a sense of what's going on for them in their energy field and feel it?
Speak louder.
Sure. Do you sometimes feel what's going on in somebody else's energy field, like intuitively knowing what their pain is or what's happening for them? And then the second question is, could you tell us about a time when you had significant results from doing a Reiki session on someone?
Sure. So with the first question, yes, there's, I think that, you know, we have the ways that we receive energy, you know, people have their different strengths. So for some people, it may be through feeling, through, you know, through their heart, through their sense and their sense of feeling, and that's kind of my stronger area. For others, it may be that they see things visually, see colors, see spirits, see, you know, like a dark area in the body or things like that. For others, they may get it through hearing things, you know, hearing messages or hearing certain words they feel like they have to say to that person or things like that. So, but there's a lot of times I'm doing a Reiki treatment, it's just quiet, peaceful. Like what's being called for in that treatment is just like bringing in a lot of peace, and there's a lot sometimes going on for the person that I have no idea about. Like there'll be times where I'm just doing the treatment and, you know, thinking, oh, I don't, you know, like not really seeing like that this is like a really powerful treatment or whatever, and then the person at the end goes, oh, that was so amazing, and I had all these memories about my childhood and my father and my relationship, and it's like, oh wow, all that was going on for them, I had no idea, you know. But there's other times where, you know, I may get a sense of something, where it feels like, oh, I need to ask about this or something, you know. I never feel like, oh, I know about this person or I'm right about this. It's maybe like, oh, this feels like something I need to check out with them. Or, you know, there may be times where I get a sense around healing sexual abuse. Sometimes the person knows about that. Sometimes memories come up during a treatment that is the first time they've been aware of something. And our bodies really take care of us, like they protect us. And we, you know, our bodies are like these containers that hold things for us until we're ready for the healing to happen. And if something is getting released, a memory is getting released, it's because the body is trusting that energy, trusting that person that you're with, trusting that energy to go, okay, this is the right time for this to come up. So there's times I've supported people through really painful memories or situations that can be really intense and really painful for them to go through through the treatment. But then on the other side of it is there's this release, this joy, this lightness, because, you know, it takes a lot of energy to kind of hold that in all the time. And then, you know, even though it can be a bit of a shock for someone to go, wow, that happened to me, it's like there's just this real aliveness comes with that too. So again, it's like just getting to be that container. And so that's, you know, more on the rare occasion. I don't want people to think, oh, as soon as you put your hands on somebody, all this stuff comes up, right? It's more, you know, that it's like a deep, peaceful experience, and relieves the pain. But there's times where, because what it's doing is it's speeding up the healing process. It's concentrating that. So there's times where before it releases, it can feel like kind of uncomfortable or that pain kind of increasing. But it will, if you can just stay with that, then it will release and it will clear. So one situation that comes to mind to answer your other question is, there was this man, I was working up in the doctor's office in Silverton when I first started my practice with Reiki. I wasn't a Reiki master yet. I had my 2nd degree Reiki, and I was on that path. I knew that I was going to be teaching Reiki. But one of the things I started to do was to have a practice. And so I was having my practice in the doctor. Come on in. Time change probably, right? I'm Holly, and I'm just talking about Reiki. And so I was getting to do Reiki in this doctor's office. He had a little treatment room. Like, I came back from this trip when I realized I was going to be a Reiki master, and I thought, okay, I lived up on Red Mountain at the time outside of Silverton, so not an easy place to get to, especially in the winter for people. So I thought, oh, I need a little place down in town somewhere that I can treat. So there was the doctor's office in New Denver, and I got back from the trip, and his wife said, oh, she was the pharmacist there. She said, oh, come on in, I want to show you something. And she takes me back and shows me this beautiful room that they've built. And I'm like, what are you going to use this for? And she says, oh, I don't know, we thought maybe massage or something, you know. And I went, oh, I could do Reiki here. So we made an arrangement that I would do Reiki on the doctor in exchange for my rent to use that space for treatments. So I started having my practice there. That's where I first began. And so that would have been in 1984 then. And the doctor started referring people to me. So, you know, up to that point, I'd done Reiki on friends and family. And now I was having, like, strangers come, and they were saying, I don't know about this. Like, I don't really believe in this stuff, but the doctor made me come. You know? I'm like, okay, well, and I felt very shy about it. You lie down, and people also, you keep your clothes on during a treatment, right? So you have clothes on, you can have a blanket on. The Reiki will go through all of that, even through a cast, right? And so this man came in like that, very kind of closed and grumpy, and he was ready to get a shoulder replacement, but the doctor wouldn't book him for his surgery till he tried Reiki first. So he came in, and just from that first treatment, and he had a frozen shoulder, he couldn't move it at all. Just from the first treatment, the pain relief he got from that, and then he could just begin to move his arm a little bit. It gave him enough hope that maybe there was something here. So he started coming back regularly, and then he said, I have to stop coming, because what was happening during the treatments is he was trying to keep these blinders on about his job. He hated his job, and he just only had 10 more years until he could retire, you know? And he said, if I keep coming for Reiki, I'm going to have to quit my job, right? Because he could see that this just kept coming up for him. So he went back to work, and then he got to have kind of a mental breakdown, but he got to go on a medical leave for a year. And so during that time, he started having Reiki treatments regularly, and he ended up coming to a class and learning Reiki and started treating himself. And, meanwhile, each time I saw him, he'd be like, look, and then showing me how much more he could move his arm. So he got full movement of his arm, never went for a surgery, and he actually moved away. So, I was like, I didn't really know what had happened to him. And, I ran into him in the airport in Spokane a couple years later, and he looked so beautiful, like so young, and like I saw, oh, he was really in that kind of, not that he was physically dying, but he was kind of like energetically dying, because he wasn't really living his life when I first met him. He was very, trying to hang in there, right? But he'd say, when I retire, I can, do this and this and this. And he had all these things, like he could really start his life when he retired. So he only had 10 more years he was trying to hold out. But, he ended up, when he took that year off, he ended up starting to live his life then and do his healing then. And so, he got full movement back, as well as starting to, just really heal all the other things. So there's many, many, experiences and stories like that, but that's one that comes to mind.
That's a nice story.
Can you give us an idea of what a treatment looks like?
Yeah, I use a Reiki table. I mean, you can use the floor, a couch, a bed, a chair, whatever. But I like a table, like a massage table. But I have it low enough so I can just sit in a chair comfortably. And then I just am doing hand positions. And each position, you're there about 3 to 5 minutes. Sometimes you may be there 10 minutes if it feels like there's lots going on. Like I feel and sense things in my hands. I get this warm, tingly kind of feeling, and it feels like energy being pulled through the hands in a way. And so it feels like I don't really, to begin with, you can kind of time things more so you get a sense, but then you begin to listen to your hands so you feel when you're complete in a certain place. And so, I do different head positions, and then different positions on the abdomen and the back, and then you can do specific things with the arms and the legs if you need to, but the energy's also running down through those
But
limbs.
it's mostly like somebody comes and says, I have a sore shoulder, then you mostly treat the shoulder or treat the whole body?
I treat the whole body, but I would do more a very thorough treatment on the shoulder. But also, like there's times where you treat the headache, there's 3 different positions for treating the headache, but maybe the headache doesn't clear, and then you treat the stomach and the headache clears, or the reproductive system and the headache clears, because it's like how we're connected, where we hold things in our body and how things are connected. So always, best to get to do a full treatment. And for many people, a full treatment, like my teacher, a full treatment was an hour. For me, I find a full treatment, I just kind of did, when I was first gonna do my practice, I just tried full treatments on friends and to see what my timing was, instead of trying to keep it in an hour. When I do a full treatment, it's an hour and a half.
So when, let's say, get back to the shoulder, is there a description or a regulation about where you should start with the shoulder, or are you doing that completely in your own intuition?
No, it's like you learn the hand positions. It's like the form that you learn, and then the essence, the energy of the Reiki fills that form. And then with treating the shoulders, it's also like you can just, you can have a hand above and below the shoulder. You can either have a hand on both shoulders, or you can do one shoulder really thoroughly, like treating like that. And then again, when the person's turned over on their stomach, then you can treat the backs of the shoulders and the shoulder blade in that area too.
So there's no rules in number 1, 2, 3 that you have to follow for that?
Well, there is in regards to you learn the form. And I do tend to use the form unless I get a strong intuition that I need to do something else. And then there's extra positions that you can kind of add in as you go also. But it's not, and then that's doing full treatments. But then, if I was just, at your house visiting, and while we were visiting, I was treating your shoulder, then we could just, you could just be sitting there and I could be behind you and just
So it's
treating
kind of
you.
loose.
Yeah, so there's no wrong way. It's not, you're not gonna hurt anyone.
No,
You're not gonna do it
definitely
wrong
not,
or
no.
anything, right? I'm just aware of the time, so I'm not sure if we
Do you
need to
have
finish.
an office anywhere
I just-
closer than New Denver?
Oh, yeah, I live in Nelson now. I live up on View Street near the hospital. I lived up there for 25 years, but I've been living in Nelson for many years now, probably 20 years. And I live up on View Street, and I just, and I work in the school system now. Like, for 10 years, I just traveled a lot teaching Reiki. But I have a son who's 14. I raised my stepdaughters. They're in their 40s now, so I have grandchildren. And now I have a son who's 14, and so I'm working with the school board as an educational assistant. I've always worked with special needs children, and then I had that 10 years where I was just traveling teaching Reiki, and then I got asked when I was in Vancouver one time if I would work with this little girl in the school system who had just lost her mother and her baby brother and the use of her legs in a car accident, and she was 5 years old, and she was in a 3-way custody battle. And so they asked if I would work with her. And so, I feel like with being a Reiki master, I go to where I'm called to, right? And for many years it was doing a lot of traveling teaching, and now it's, it felt like at that point it was bringing the Reiki back into working with special needs children that I had, been working with since I was a teenager, right, in that field. So now I'm working in the school system here. This year I'm at Trafalgar. And so I also, just do treatments in my home, and I do my classes in my home. It's just a, small little gathering space, Chris.
I have a curiosity. I got a Reiki treatment once by a master that was called Phyllis. I wonder if it's Phyllis
Phyllis
Victory.
Furumoto. She used to live here in
Not
Nelson.
Phyllis Victory,
Okay, Phyllis Victory. I've heard of her too.
but
Yeah.
it's not her.
No.
Okay.
Phyllis Furumoto
So
did many years ago
Phyllis and Reiki.
live here because she came with her grandmother up to the Kootenays to teach Reiki.
Okay.
And then she ended up living here, and she loves it here. She loves coming back here. Right now she's living in Arizona, but she has lived in different countries at different times depending on where she's been called to be. But she has a very strong connection to here. Yes.
The first time I heard about Reiki was my friend Jeremy, and I was in high school, and I was feeling, kind of messed up, kind of depressed or something, and he's like, oh, I just learned Reiki from this master. So let me try some Reiki on you, okay? So I lied down and he put his hands on my forehead, and I was very open, and this burning, it felt like a flame, like it was almost too hot, like it was like a burning match. I was like, what the heck? And I knew he wasn't actually burning me, and I was like, okay, I'll just surrender. And the most incredible energy came over my whole body, and I felt so good. I was like, oh my God, I'm like so happy, like it was like ecstatic. That was the first time that I learned about Reiki, and I realized anybody could do it, because this is my friend Jeremy. He's not exactly spiritually connected, but at all. Yeah. But this one thing that his master taught him, and he used those techniques, and it was absolutely incredible. So I've been into Reiki since then.
Oh, great. Yeah.
This is a good time to mention these pamphlets.
Yeah, so I have these are just little brochures. Everybody's welcome to take one.
On the table.
Yeah, and I also just wrote, in case anyone's interested, I'm doing the first degree class that weekend. The cost for the first degree class is $200, and I do payment arrangements and things with people if needed. And the first night is always open for anyone to come. It's like a free introductory evening, even though it's the first night of the class. So it's kind of, just like what I've just been doing here, although it's longer, right? So, I go more into the history in that as well. And probably more stories, because it is an oral tradition. You get all those stories of different experiences. And so the first evening is like 6:30 to basically 9:30. And so then if people are doing the whole class, then I'm doing that first initiation at that evening, but only for the people that are doing the whole class, not the people that are just there for the introductory evening. So I just make that open for anyone to come that first night, but it is also part of the class. So you're welcome to, help yourself to those.
Maybe if you could mention it too, I can mention it. I took my first degree with Holly about 15 years ago, and then I have been invited to come back, and it's totally for free. Like once you have
can review.
Your first degree, you can just come back for refreshers anytime.
Yeah.
You can fit it in.
And Ula has her second degree also.
Well, while we're talking, I'll pass our cards around. That's our Course in Miracle cards. Everyone goes one and reads it. Oh, okay. I don't know if there's enough to go around, but
I think there's 20. I don't know how many people
Oh,
are
yeah.
here. But
Yeah.